Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to explain to you how to build your diorama, how to do all the steps of the process. And as you work through this, if you forget what you need to do, you can return to this video and it'll tell you what your next step should be and how to get that done. And then you don't have to wait around for me if you have questions about that. So I've got some stuff done already, but I'm going to show you how to do all the things except for how to build your background. Most of you have that started already. So here's my background. I've just got a variety of blue pieces. It's going to be just a generic kind of sky. There's some writing. I don't know if you guys can see that. Some writing, and then that ripped a little bit when I cut it. But it's not a big deal because I've already got a plan for what my diorama is going to look like. And I know that that piece is going to be covered up, so it's not a big deal anyways. So this is my background right now. This is done. I've got a couple other pieces. So remember, you have a background, a middle ground, and a foreground, and your middle ground or your foreground have to have two separate pieces. So in total, you need a minimum of 3 pieces, not counting your background. So here's some of my other pieces. I'm just going to do a little nature scene. So I've got this bird cut out, and you can see it's on cardstock already. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and how to, more importantly, cut it out so that it's clean. And here I've got just a garden of flowers. And then I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with this. I thought I was going to use it in the vase, but I might cut the vase out. But anyways, first thing I'm going to show you is how to do this. So I found a magazine clipping of some deer. I might use these deer in my diorama too, but I don't want this background. I might keep the grass in there, but when I cut this out, I'm gonna clean up the edges, and I'm gonna use an X-Acto knife to get in between all the antlers of the deer. In between the deer antlers there. And I don't know, I might, it doesn't look like I'll have to cut anything like in his armpit or anything like that, but I'll definitely be precisely going around the shape of the deer, and then this like horizon line of the grass right there. So when you find something in your magazine that you like, you don't have to do a clean cut. Make sure you get a lot of extra stuff with it too, like I have here. So this is going to be like, all this background is going to be garbage. So I'm going to take a piece of yellow cardstock, which I believe I left in the front of the room right on this table over here. Get yourself some rubber cement. And I'm going to take that rubber cement, and when you use rubber cement, don't be afraid to, let it dry and stick to my tables, but put some paper under it, and don't be afraid to get all the way, make a mess with it, kind of. Because the nice thing about rubber cement is that after it dries, it like just rolls up like a ball and peels up, and it doesn't leave, well, sometimes this stuff actually does leave a residue. Most of the time it shouldn't leave a residue, but it's even the little residue that it does leave, it's way better than the clumpy hard pieces of white glue. So I'm going to put these deer so I've got them glued to my yellow cardstock. And I'm going to let that dry for a minute. So we have to build these layers up, and we want each layer to be a 1/2 inch from the layer behind it. So if we're building from our background, our middle ground is going to be a 1/2 inch from the background, and our foreground is going to be a full inch from the background, and just a 1/2 inch from the middle ground. So I don't know, I call them the stilts or the stretcher pieces are going to vary depending on how you have your diorama built. So I'm testing this now. I'm kind of applying pressure. When you first put the rubber cement, when you first glue it on, like you'll be able to slide that picture around a little bit. It's not sliding anymore, so it's dry, so I can start cutting it out. I wish I had scissors. And if you're using your X-Acto knife and you feel it kind of pulling and ripping instead of actually cutting, your blade's no good and you need a new blade. Now today they're locked up in the cage and you guys won't have access to them, but when I get back, I'll be able to swap your blades out for you if they're no good. So now I'm going around these deer or elk or moose or whatever kind of woodland creature these things are. And also, like when I cut, if you can see that, when I cut these antlers out, I don't want to cut down. This is hard to do. I don't want to cut down towards the antler. I want to take my blade and cut up and away from it. So any chance that I have that I might that my blade might go too far, I want it to go too far in the stuff that I'm not going to use. So I'm just getting the antlers out right now. And what'll happen is when I'm done cutting, I'm sure I'm not going to get everything. Very seldom does the stuff that I cut actually like fall out. There's usually a little piece that I've missed or something. So the tendency is to like pull it away, but I can see on the back already. So I'm going to go through and get those little spots, usually the little corners, and I'm just going to clean those up so I don't accidentally rip something that I want in my diorama. Just kind of using the X-Acto knife to push the pieces away. There we go. All right. And this other deer here is kind of running away, and she's kind of underneath the grass line. So there you have it. And you can see how I've cut along the shape of that. And I got a little flap here. I'm going to clean that up. All right. And I've got some yellow underneath. I want to hide that and get rid of that. So I'm going to clean up this bottom edge. Just kind of cut it straight across. And there you have it. So now this piece, I'm happy with that. I'm ready to put that into my diorama. And don't throw away this, because I can still use this piece for my stilts. All right, so now I have to plan out what my diorama is going to look like. And I can just lay the stuff on top. So I don't know. I'll put that there. Maybe I'll put this here. I'll put the deer here, and then I'll use this big. I'll cut that vase off, and I'll just put a big bush of flowers in the middle there. So that's what my diorama is going to look like. So that's my plan. Now I just have to put the stilt pieces in there so that they're the proper distance from the background. Well, and first I'm gonna do what I did to the deer. I'm gonna do that to the flower vase here as well. So I'm just finding the edges of these leaves. And if something is, especially with flowers or with things in nature, like the shapes are organic, and they're if you cut, like if I would have cut an ear off of the deer, nobody would have noticed. If I would have cut one of the points off of the antlers, nobody would have missed it. So that's not a big deal. But you also don't want to have something that's organic, like this bush of flowers with a perfectly straight line going through it. You want that texture, that organic texture. But if you slip up and you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. And most of the time, those errors are hardly noticeable. All right, there we go. So now I've removed the vase. I got sloppy over here. I'm going to clean that up. That's no bueno. So when I do, you probably can't see it. There's this little spot right here. It's got like 3 prongs of leaves. So when I make the X-Acto knife cuts, I'm going to stick my knife in and I'm going to cut out all 3 times. So I'm not going to cut in towards the flowers. There we go. So that's a little bit better. Actually, it's a lot better. So now I'm going to I've got all my pieces. I've got my background. So now it's time to make the stilts and get this thing built up. And for that, you're not going to use the rubber cement. You're going to use white glue. And in this case, I don't have white glue laying around. My wife's got this Craft Bond. I think it's the same thing. Or at least it should be close enough. So we're going to go back to this scrap piece that we cut. And so I'm going to make stilts for my middle ground first. And to do that, I'm going to use my ruler. And I'm going to make a 1/2 inch mark on either end. And I'm just going to cut a 1/2 inch strip. Actually, this is kind of a sloppy piece. So I'm going to make a straight cut first. I'm going to clean, I don't know what happened. It got caught in the paper cutter, and it's a kind of a rough edge. So I'm going to clean that edge first, actually. I'm going to use my ruler. Why didn't that make a line? There we go. So I've got a pencil line drawn. I'm going to cut. So now I've got a nice, clean, crisp line to work from. I'm going to use my ruler. I'm going to make a mark, a 1/2 inch mark at either end. So there you have it. I've got this first mark was before I cut that sloppy edge off. So I know it's my bigger mark. So I've got a mark there. I've got a mark here. I'm going to line my ruler up. So now I've got that line. I'm going to cut that. So now this, I can get multiple stilts out of this piece. So I've measured and cut. You don't have to cut each individual stilt. You can cut one strip and then just kind of lop off pieces as you need it. And remember, I did a demonstration in class a couple weeks ago talking about a piece of paper. And a flat piece of paper by itself is not going to stand up, right? But if you fold it, you create a spine, and it'll actually support its weight, and I could actually, it'll probably support the weight of some other, that might be too much. Almost. Definitely it should support that, right? So we're gonna make that work for us. So my stilts don't need to be a specific size. It's however big your middle ground or your foreground is. You want them big enough to support it, but small enough to hide them. So you don't want to see them, but you want them big enough so that they can support the weight of whatever layer it is that you're putting on. So I'm going to make stilts for this because this is a longer piece. So I'm going to set my background flat in front of me. Let's see. Let's do it here so that you guys can kind of see. So I've got my stilt piece. I'm going to lop off 2. And that will actually, like, I'm going to set these, I'm going to glue them, and then I'm going to set them off to dry. So it's a 1/2 inch this way. So I'm going to fold it this way. So going along the fold, it's a 1/2 inch from the bottom to the top. And I'm going to do that to both of them. And you want to make sure when you fold them too, when you fold them, you want to make sure you go corner to corner. Because if you do something like that where it's not really folded properly, it's going to sit all wonky. It's not going to work out for you, and you're going to get frustrated. So I've got them folded. I'm going to take my craft bond, and instead of this, again, you guys will use white glue. I'm going to put just a little bit right there. And a little bit right there. And then I'm going to test to make sure that that's going to support. Perfect. So now put a little bit of craft bond or a little bit of glue here on the top of these stilts. Man, this stuff's gross. It's like a booger. I'm Wish we had white glue. All right, so I've got my craft bond where I need it to be. Then I'm going to put these guys right there. So now, while that dries, I can build my stilts and attach my other piece of my middle ground. I don't know. Want to do a bird? Now that doesn't make sense, because then if the bird and the deer are on the same level, that's like a huge bird in comparison to the size of the deer. So that's not going to work. That doesn't make sense. So flowers it is. And again, I'm going to go back to my little 1/2-inch stretcher piece. I'm going to lop 2 of them off. There we have them. Fold them like the letter V. And where do I want that to go? Right about there. Put that down. That down. Go. So there you go. So now I've got, let's see if it's dry. Nope, it's not dry enough to support. So this, the flowers that I just put, they're falling down. So I don't need to glue another piece, but I'll take what's left over that 1/2-inch and I'll prop it under there for support. So now I have an option. I can build my middle piece from the two, or I'm sorry, I can build my foreground from the 2 middle ground pieces, or I've got space right here in the middle. So I can support it right here and right here. Let's see if I can pick this up and get it a little bit closer. So you can see that's what it looks like now. So as I was saying, I need this to be right about there. So I can take a 1/2-inch stretcher piece and put it here and here on my middle ground and put that guy there. Or I can do, this is a big enough piece, I can put a full 1-inch stilt. I was calling them stretcher pieces, stilts, whatever. I can put a full 1-inch one here, here, and here and put it on those. Or I could use a combination. I could do 2 1/2-inchers and then a full inch in the middle if I want to support it that way. But yeah, so you have options, and you want to think about where the weight is being supported when you put these pieces on, especially when you're going from your middle ground to your foreground. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have left to do is just get my foreground attached, and then I'm done. So make sure, again, you want the background fully covered. Your middle ground and your foreground will each be a 1/2-inch from the layer behind it, and either your middle ground or your foreground should have 2 separate layers. So in this case, it's my middle ground, because these, even though they're both my middle ground, they are 2 separate pieces. So there you have it. Good luck. Have fun.